And we're going to hand it over to our next panel. David, are you on?
Oh, sorry.
David Yee.
The host
There we
muted,
are.
and so I unmuted myself. Um, Good to see you. How's it going, everyone? It's remarkable. There's so many people here. Well, I will kick this off to the next session, which is activating influencers. My name is David Yee, and I was one of the co-chairs for Korean Americans for Joe Biden. I was the events chair, so I have a lot of experience kind of bringing together AAPI voices, creating different conversations, and creating conversations within different sectors that perhaps, in the past, the DNC has not been able to quite have a reach with. That was the beauty industry, the fashion industries, also in Hollywood. But I'm super excited to introduce our panelists today. And those include Jeff Yang. Jeff Yang is a co-author of Rise, A Pop History of Asian America from the 90s to now, and co-host of They Call Us Bruce. He led the AAPI's with Warren effort during the primaries and was part of the organizing team developing influencer content for AAPIs for Biden and Harris. Jeff, are you there? Are you out there?
I am here. I'm here and always delighted to be speaking with you, David.
Same, and I can't wait for this very important book to come out. Next is Nick Dodani. Nick Dodani is an actor and comedian known for his roles in Murphy Brown and Escape Room. Nick, are you there?
Yes, hello, hi.
I love your background, love your sweater. We're gonna have to talk about this later.
Thank
Also,
you.
love the aviator glasses. And then finally, we have Pam Stamoulis, the former digital surrogates director, Biden for President campaign. Pam, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did it perfectly. And yes, hi everyone. That's great. Thank you. Happy to be here.
And I'm David Yee, the founder of Very Good Light, a men's and masculine identifying beauty publication, and author of the upcoming Pretty Boys, which comes out in June. So I want to kick this off just as an open question for all of you. This year we saw an unprecedented engagement in the Biden campaign and get out the vote efforts among AAPI influencers, which was amazing. Why do you think this was the case, Nick?
I think that, well, one, I think it's the results of just years of organizing, and kind of the culmination of a lot of the work that folks on this call have done. And also, I just think, the dam was broken. It was really either, sit on the sidelines and be complicit in the bullshit, or step in and use your platform. And I think a lot of folks realize that the potential, a lot of influencers and actors and stuff, like sometimes they're hesitant to engage in politics because they think it's going to hurt their brand or hurt their whatever. And I think a lot of folks realize this cycle that doesn't matter, that the risk, even if it's there, is worth it. And I think Biden and Kamala in particular helped energize a lot of folks in a way that hasn't been before. And of course, the anti-Trump sentiment was very, very, very strong, not to discount that.
Absolutely. And Pam, you have so much experience in this space. What did you observe that was different from 2020 than 4 years ago in 2016 when it comes to the AAPI vote, when it comes to engaging influencers? I think we may have lost Pam. I'm going to take that to Jeff. What is your opinion on that? Being a writer and being a prominent voice in AAPI for so many years, what made 2020 different from 2016?
Well, I think a lot of it, honestly, is that this is a community that's always punched above its weight, especially on social media. I mean, we're 4 or 5% of the US population, but if you look at every major social medium, every platform, we have a disproportionate representation and a disproportionate share of volume. We talk loud, and we have a generation of Asian Americans now who have grown up with this as their native language, right? If you look at Facebook and TikTok and YouTube. This is where we've really cultured, and Instagram, of course, right? This is where we've cultured a lot of our most exciting and interesting creators. And having that native ability, that sense of fluency in the medium, has always been something that I think political campaigns haven't really quite known how to tap. People see Asian Americans as a source of money, right? I thought that was a fantastic session talking about tapping into the resources of the Asian American community, and more broadly, the way that we can provide fuel, if you will, both up and down the ticket. But influence is also a commodity, and we have more influence than our numbers. I think it's especially important because you see where we're clustered both geographically and in certain industries. We are disproportionately represented in technology, right? As people who are building the infrastructure on which we're actually creating content. We're also disproportionately represented in a lot of professions that are right now really at the spotlight, the center of the world. I mean, you look at medical professions, for instance, a lot of the most interesting and valuable and powerful and emotional content we've seen over the last 6 months has come from people who aren't traditional storytellers, but who are using these mediums to tell very personal, emotional stories about what they're seeing in their lives. And a lot of them are doctors and nurses and allied health professionals and frontline workers. This is all the stuff which I think has kind of gotten bottled. I mean, I don't want to say that there's a silver lining in any way of this pandemic, but the fact is, we are now what you see here. We're faces on screens, right? And Asian Americans have been better at being faces on screens than any other segment in America, maybe even in the world, right? And we are also, because of coronavirus, more in the spotlight, more targeted in some ways, but also more amplified than we've ever been. So all this happened at a time when this campaign was really coming together. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to actually put an Asian American on the ticket if you want to excite Asian Americans. So that's what I'd say is the very, very biggest change from 2016 to 2020.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. And Pam, you're back. As a former surrogates director for the Biden for president campaign, what did you see that was different from this year as opposed to 2016 when it came to engaging the AAPI vote? Okay, maybe Pam isn't back like we thought. I'm going to take it over to Nick. Nick, you are a Hollywood actor, and so many folks in Hollywood were very trepid and slow to kind of endorse Biden and Harris for the president and vice presidency. But you were very outspoken. Did you think about the repercussions of perhaps your reputation in Hollywood? And what made you want to speak out and be so vocal at a time when so many people in Hollywood were afraid?
I didn't worry too much about my reputation. I don't say that to like pat myself on the back. I think I was just so focused, and focused isn't the right word. I was so panicked about about what could happen if we lost that not immediately jumping on and being loud just didn't feel like an option. And I think most folks came around to that. You know, I think some people were frankly disappointed that their candidate didn't win in the primary, and were kind of having sore feelings about that, which is understandable. But you know, it was it's 2020, the craziest election of our lifetime. Like it really didn't really, the alternative wasn't really an option for me.
And you create a very viral and hilarious video featuring South Asian influencers. Where did the idea come from, and why was that a way for you to utilize the talents that you have?
Well, the idea came from me and my friend Vinny Chiver, who's also an actor and producer, and you know we've done a lot of organizing in the South Asian community in entertainment. And you know, one thing that's been really cool over the last year for us is just bringing together a lot of brown people in one room, you know, pre-pandemic. And it, you know, something that we hadn't really got to experience before in our careers was to just be around a table with a bunch of Desi folks exclusively. And we thought, can we bring that to, the election? In past cycles, we haven't seen, we've seen Asian American engagement, but often like, South Asian individuals or groups are often, in the minority or frankly tokenized in the conversations. And we thought, let's do an all brown something. And then I wrote the script and we pitched it to the Biden campaign, and worked with them on getting it done, and got some really incredible folks to be in it, and push it out. And we're actually about to drop a sequel, and it actually might have dropped like 10 minutes ago, I think.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, which is what this background is. And it's fun. It's fun. I think it's so cool to be able to see the excitement from talent, and also just the fact that there's actually an audience for it is really exciting as well. And I'm thrilled to see folks engaging in a way that hasn't really been seen before.
Well, I can't wait to get off this call, not because you aren't interesting, but because I want to watch this video. So that's what I'm going to have to do right after. Jeff, tell us more about some of the influencer-driven campaigns you led in viral social media, like hashtag AAPI She Rose and hashtag My Name Is. Where did that come about, and how was that amplified, and how did it do on Twitter?
So, first of all, those campaigns were organic and they were phenomenal. They came out of really late nights and early morning. I mean, we're talking about like 3 a.m. conversations from a community of individuals who kind of came together around the campaign, and who were inspired not so much by, sort of top down or center out, but really outside in. People were honestly, much of the organizing was being done on a text messaging group that kept on growing and growing as people added their friends and their fellow volunteers and other influencers and campaign veterans. And I think that a lot of what that shows is that at the end of the day, organizing is community, and influencer networks are community, right? The most organic and authentic and powerful ways of reaching out to people using influencers isn't to just sort of drop talking heads into PSAs. It really is to find authentic emotions and voices and opportunities to tell really resonant stories at a specific moment in time. So what we saw was that there was a lot of kind of untapped energy in the Asian American community to specifically celebrate the fact that we had our first Asian American on a presidential ticket, right? Our first Black, our first Asian, our first woman to be a vice president, and that she was going to be having a debate, the first historic debate by a woman in her situation, in her position. And it was going to be so critical because, especially with things so confused after the first presidential debate, people were really looking to this one as a way of elevating the narrative and looking at the options in front of us on voting day in a very different light. And we wanted to support that. So the conversation really went to what is it that we could do to just sort of summarize the legacy that Kamala Harris was representing to all of us, the connections that she was making, even in her own story, that we could resonate with. And we talked about heroes, and we talked about women. We talked about the legacy of, parents, especially mothers, reaching down and reaching out and lifting up their children. And we talked about how that strain of connectedness and heroism was something that we thought really could be a great lever for getting other people to share their stories. And that's the bottom line, right? You don't want people to be saying what you want them to say. You want them to be saying what they want to say. And giving them a platform to tell their stories and link them to the larger one you're trying to tell is the way that influencer viral campaigns especially can work. So that campaign, again, came together in a 3 a.m. conversation. We reached out to a bunch of people. There is a whole sort of area of research around this, which I've been deeply involved in. I'm a journalist by trade, but over the last 20 years, I've been working in social media research. And the idea is there's something called big seed, right? Where if you actually take a message and get it out to as many different niches as possible, as many disparate and far apart niches as possible. Don't worry about getting big influencers, Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber. That's not really how you make something go viral. You get thousands and thousands of people who have smaller platforms, but who are very different from one another to be talking about it, because it feels like then the message is coming from everywhere and people feel like they have to be a part of it. And that was the strategy we really used for kind of both of those. The first went in a more planned fashion. And then My Name Is, that was after Kamala Harris's name was purposely mispronounced by David Perdue. There was a real opportunity there to, again, reach out to people from many different walks of life to share their own experiences and then bring them together in a campaign that elevated all of them up to a central story. And I will say the very best thing about working on these social influencer campaigns for this campaign is these are the same people. The same people are coming back and pitching in again, because by reaching out to them after they've shared, we were able to actually thank them, say, hey, we want to keep in touch with you. We want to build relationships. We formed other groups, both on Twitter and elsewhere, kind of smaller communities where people could resonate. And it enabled us to actually make it into an ongoing conversation and resource, and not simply a single ask and then buy forever, which unfortunately, I think historically been the case for influencer campaigns in the API community in the past.
Pam, I want to go to you. I hope you're there, but I wanted to ask what you observed from 2020 compared to 2016 when it came to engaging AAPI voters, especially on social media.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. I just want to say, I mean, exactly what I'm hearing from Nick and Jeff is part of what made 2020 so successful, right? Like, we really, on this campaign and this cycle, I think it was important and such a priority across different constituencies and different communities. And then, adding in the announcement of Senator Harris as the VP selection also, I think, really mattered on this campaign. And just like the amount of organizing that we saw from the different communities, there's no more important validator than someone from the community themselves. And oftentimes what we would experience on the campaign is like folks looking to us saying, well, what is it exactly, like, let's do a PSA or let's do this. And it was like, consistently the most effective programs that we saw were, and the things that we wanted to prioritize were encouraging and lifting up people talking on their own platforms to their audiences and to their constituencies. And I think that was something that, was really effective and really powerful. Seeing the work that Nick did and that Jeff did as well.
We have time for one last question. Do you have any words of wisdom for advocates out there, in this conversation and beyond, who want to partner with influencers in their advocacy work? How do you engage them? How do you, bring them into the conversation in a way where you can meet? Nick, do you have any kind of words of wisdom or tips to engage influencers in advocacy?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is just to be organized in the ask. I think making it very clear what you're asking, when the specific thing is taking place, pretty much every possible question that they might ask, just have it answered in the first email, I think is the best way to do it. And like, the fewer emails, the better. And especially if you're working with the talent directly, I think a lot of artist types are just kind of scattered. And if it's like an email chain with like 30 different people and sending multiple different messages back and forth, I think it might get lost and you might lose some engagement. So making it simple and clear and easy, just treating us like kids, I think is the best way to handle it. Just being honest about what you're looking for. If you're really looking for, like, we want you to post this thing, and that's really all we want you to do, just be honest about it. That's chill. I think organization, clarity, honesty.
Love that. Jeff, Pam, anything to add?
Yeah, I love the remark about treating influencers as kids, Nick. I say this because
Sure.
in my household, I have a kid influencer. My son Hudson Yang is an actor. He was on the show Fresh Off the Boat for 6 seasons as Eddie Huang. And actually, one of the things that I really learned both from that experience and from this one is that the youngest generation especially is far more mature than you might possibly imagine, and far more sophisticated and advanced, both in technology and in their thinking. And I actually did, at Hudson's guidance and request, he wanted to get involved in the Biden campaign. He was involved in a number of different things, different panels and campaigns. One of which I thought was really interesting. David was the MC for it. We kind of spontaneously got a bunch of influencers together to play Among Us, right? And to talk through ways in which people could especially participate in helping to turn Texas blue. Hudson also, with a number of his friends who all were, again, not voting age yet, 14, 13, 15, got together and did a PSA video for APIA Vote. Which really was focused on this idea that we can't vote, but you can vote for us and for our futures. I guess what I would say is that, listen to the influencers themselves, find the ones who are most passionate and help them help you. And don't just reach out to them when you need something. Reach out to them when you don't, because building those bridges now, building those bridges when it's not essential is really what's going to ensure that when there is urgency, they'll be listening to you. And that's true for everything. That's true, especially for Asian Americans, right? We always get asked to do stuff when we're needed, not when we're not. And I think as Asian Americans, that's something we should deeply take to heart.
Pam, any last closing words?
I agree with both of those comments. I think, particularly on the campaign, we were, very cognizant of, making sure that we were asking, again, to Nick's point, clear, direct asks always. We want to know, everyone, needs to have a good sense of what exactly the ask is and what the context and all those things, but also making sure that all the work that was being done was authentic to them and to their audience. And so, we'd never ask someone to do something that they didn't want to do, or we, if folks came to us and said, these are things we want to do based off of, what was important to them, then we strongly encouraged it. And so it's very much a mix of, matching surrogate interests to things on the campaigns, or, external partners and things like that. But authenticity was very important.
Awesome. And with that, I'm going to conclude this conversation. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Nick, for all of your work. I'm so very inspired. And back to you all at AAPI Progress.